Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and so glad to have you along with us. How are you? Are you enjoying the weather, which finally feels like maybe it's going to be nice? It does feel good, doesn't it? But hey, I mean, come on, it's almost the middle of May, so you would expect that it would be, but it's nice. It's so nice. So what's going on? My turkey hunting saga. You know, and it's painful to me for me to even say this, but I'll set the stage by reminding you about 20 minutes into opening day, which my opening day was back on April 22nd. I had 2 big, beautiful longbeards walk in on me 20 minutes after the opening of the season. I had my new crossbow all dialed in. I was ready to go, ready to rock, very confident. And I missed a bird. Not by much, but I missed him. And that started the saga of what would be a long season. Now, I've been posting updates online of how my hunts have been going. And I've had a lot of people say, how are you hunting so long? They say, my season was like 7 days. How are you still out there? Avery, do you have a deal with the DNR that lets you to hunt outside of season? No. No, I don't. My hunt is ZZ. And if you live in southern Michigan and have access to private land, I recommend ZZ because it started April 22nd and the season runs through the end of May. That's a long time. Now, I hope you don't need that much time to get your bird, but if you do, that's a long time. Southern Michigan, private land, ZZ, April 22nd through the end of May. So, I missed that bird opening morning. Found out that my crossbow was off a little bit. I had done some last-minute manipulation, which should not have affected the point of impact, but it did, and that was my bad. That was all on me. I made that mistake. I admit that. I screwed up, and I paid the price. But because I'm pretty patient and pretty persistent and maybe stubborn, and because I'm blessed with a pretty flexible schedule, I had been hunting almost every day since April 22nd. Not all day. You know, I might go out for a few hours in the morning, might go out for a few hours in the evening, jumping around from property to property. And again, I'm blessed because I have access to, property too. I don't own any, but I have some very nice, very generous friends. So I was jumping around, playing cat and mouse, trying some different setups, tweaking where the blind was. I did make some changes. I wasn't happy with the way that my previous broadheads were flying. I couldn't get them to group. And they are expandable broadheads, which are supposed to fly like darts. But I wasn't happy with that, so I switched my expandable heads over to the REK, R-E-K, FX4, which is a fixed blade head, which is not ideal for turkeys, but I wanted a head that I knew was going to fly straight. Almost every time out, I saw birds. I had birds in front of me. Not a lot of gobbling. They would gobble on the roost. They might gobble when they hit the ground, and then they would shut up. Almost every hunt, I was able to call in hens, multiple hens, and I thought, every time I'd call a hen in, or every time I'd just sit there and be quiet and a hen would wander by, I thought she's going to have a longbeard behind her, and it didn't happen. So hunted almost every day from the opener in different locations with different setups, saw hens almost every time, and never had a longbeard in front of me. I would see him as I was driving to my spot or away from my spot, back home. I'd see him out in the field nearby, but, not in front of me. So I made one more tweak. I thought, okay, a few years ago, I switched over from the cheap, inexpensive, not very realistic foam decoys to the Avian X decoys, which are very expensive, but they look like real birds. And so most of the season, I had been hunting with an Avian X feeding hen, which means she's got her head down. It looks like she's feeding. And another Avian X hen decoy where she's got her head up and her feathers are ruffled, and it looks like she's irritated about something. And I found that the dominant boss hens would come into that standing decoy, hen decoy, and they did not like her. They would puff up and they'd cluck at her and they'd pick at her. And that really got their attention. But I didn't know if there were actually toms off that were staring at my decoys and just didn't come in or whatever. So I thought, okay, it's getting late enough in the season. I'm going to make another change. What I wanted to do was buy another Avian X, and they're not cheap, and I don't get them free. I don't get a discount. I pay full price. I wanted to get a longbeard in full strut. I thought if I can put a strutter out in that field next to the decoy, if there is a tom, a longbeard, a gobbler out there somewhere, he's going to see that. He's not going to be able to pass it up, and he's going to come running in. Couldn't find one. But what I could find was a Jake decoy in semi-strut. So I got that. The other night, this is a few days ago now as you're hearing this, I thought for sure I was going to take a bird because I was sitting on the edge of a wheat field where the birds had been all the time. I had hens in front of me all night long, but no longbeards. Next morning, I moved to a new property. Kurt, a new friend of mine, going to be a good friend of mine, a fishing buddy of mine too, I think. He said, yeah, you can come on up and hunt here. I had a Wraith 270 see-through blind set up in a field on the edge of the woods. The birds had been coming out to this field almost every morning. So I put out those two hen decoys and I put out that Jake decoy. And it was a beautiful morning. It was the kind of morning where you said, this is the perfect morning to shoot a bird, and even if I don't, it's still the perfect morning. 7:15, I see three heads coming through the woods. And they're hens. But right behind them, two big, beautiful, strutting longbeards. Never gobbled, never made a sound. They just showed up. Those two longbeards went right to that Jake decoy, and they started to work that thing over. And they circled it, and they did a dance, and it was so cool. They were going around and around this Jake decoy in full strut, paying no attention to me in the blind. I had that Tacticam camera on my crossbow, and I was able to get this all on video, and it was surprisingly good quality for a Tacticam. And they're going round and round, and they were two adult birds, one of them a little bit bigger than the other. But at this point, I'm not going to be picky, right? So I waited. I watched them going around and around. I waited till I got just the right shot. It actually was the smaller bird. Pretty big beard on him, though. He came around the decoy. I squeezed the trigger on that crossbow. I sent that arrow at the bird, realizing I had missed a bird earlier in the season. I sent the arrow at that bird, and I center punched him exactly where it needed to be. He squatted a little bit, like, ooh, that's not right. He took a few steps. The other longbeard could see he was hurt, so the other longbeard started following him. The one that I shot went about 20 feet. He took a nosedive into the dirt and started to flop around. The other bird that was with him said, I'm going to take advantage of this situation, went over and jumped on the bird I had just shot, and he beat the snot out of him. Mother Nature's cruel. Very cruel. It was a beautiful morning. The sun was shining. It was warm. I got the entire thing on video. I saw the most close-up, beautiful interaction of toms on that decoy. I just let him sit there, going around and around, round and around, before I shot him, round and around. I've got minutes of video of them going around and around that decoy, pecking at him. And that night, I shot that bird in the morning, and that night, my wife Denise, I breasted that bird out. She took one of those breasts, she put it in the crock pot, let it cook all day long in white wine, threw some little potatoes in there, and it was excellent. So the moral of this story is, even if you screw up in the outdoors, or maybe in life, if you are patient, if you are persistent, and maybe a little bit stubborn, and you don't give up, and you keep at it, sometimes you're rewarded. And I was rewarded with a beautiful bird. Not that it matters, but 10-inch beard, small spurs, I don't care. It tasted great. And it was a great hunt. You can see that hunt, by the way, on my Facebook page. You can see the video of those birds circling the decoy. You can see what my setup looked like. You can actually see the shot. I would encourage you to go there. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots, Gary Morgan from Wild Game Dynasty talking about what to expect from a bear outfitter. And before we go to the break, this is Mother's Day weekend. Happy Mother's Day to my mom, my wife Denise, my mother-in-law Eddie, my daughter Jessica, my daughter-in-law Jessica, and to you, if you're a mom, you are the glue that holds our family together. We love you. We appreciate you. You are a blessing to us. And I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. God bless you. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots. Now is the time to get busy right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. For more information, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. So what's going on in the outdoors right now? The weather is turning. Morels are popping up. Turkey season's still going on. Time to apply for your Michigan bear and elk tags. Fishing is outstanding. And it's time to get pretty serious about your food plots. When I think of working on food plots, I think of Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. Rich Chrzan, the guy at the helm of the company, and with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rich, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. And you, Mike?
I'm doing great. Sounds like you're out in the field somewhere. I bet you're working hard these days, aren't you?
Yeah, actually, I just got done driving around for the last 10 minutes, hoping I could find good signals so we could have this conversation.
Well, I appreciate that. Rich, do you guys cover, what's your area? You cover the whole state and more, or just parts of the state, or what?
Mike, I will cover wherever somebody wants to pay me to go. We've been out as far as Iowa, Colorado, Indiana, Kentucky, Missouri, just to name a few. But, you know, there's nowhere in Michigan I won't go. I love staying in Michigan if I can, but sure. I will go where people want me to.
Well, yeah, and Michigan has some interesting challenges in the northern part of the state, right? Because you don't have the fertile farm fields, the fertile soil you're going to have in southern Michigan or Illinois. You got this dirty sand, Nick used to call it, and that can be hard to grow stuff in that.
Yeah, it can. Not impossible, but it can be difficult. You know, we've got products to combat that, like our Retain Moisture Nutrient Absorbing Pellet. That works real good in sand because sand is just a great filter and water washes through real quick and doesn't hold any moisture or any of that organic matter it needs to. So that Retain will actually capture all the nutrients in the water it can when it's raining and swells up to about the size of a marble. And that will actually leach back into the root base of the plant that you've established and give it the needed water and nutrients when we're not getting that rain. Otherwise, you know, in sand, you put all that fertilizer down and you get that monsoon that we get every spring. And now your fertilizer, all your nutrients is 8 inches below your root base and it just can't get down there and get it. So that pellet's a real great tool for up north.
So what should we be doing right now in our food plot process in the cycle? Where are we at?
So right now, there's parts of Michigan that you can start spraying to kill off. Get ready to get that blank canvas and plant what you want. Obviously, I always say it, and you probably get sick of hearing it. Soil samples first. You need to know what the foundation is, what you're working with. You may not be able to plant that carnage brassica the first year. You might want to do an oats and start getting that organic matter build up into the soil. Right now is a good time to evaluate your established clover fields. Get them weeds out of there. Get that, I call it mustard weed, that yellow flower. That's really popping right now, and you can go in and combat that right now while they're growing. The weeds are growing really hard right now, so it's a good time to spray them because they're trying to get everything to the root base. So anything you put on them is going to go right to the root, and it's going to kill it off real well and give that clover that boost, get that competitive out of there. So it's that the weeds aren't taking all that nutrients that the clover needs. So yeah, that's what I'm basically doing this morning is I'm at a customer's and I'm staring over a beautiful resurrection clover field right now and getting a plan of what we're going to come back this afternoon and do. A little wet to do anything but soil defender fertilizer. I can add that right now because it loves water. So the dew will help it actually absorb into the plant and the uptake would be a lot better. So there's quite a few things we can all be doing right now to get ready for the turning dirt and planting.
When you talk about, spraying spraying an area to kill off, the green stuff, the weeds that are there now, a stupid question. Does that stay in the soil then? How do you end up putting seed in there and having it grow a few weeks later?
So Roundup doesn't leave a residual in the soil. It attacks the vegetation. That's why it's important to get the weeds at their greatest growing point, and spray it on there. Then it attacks the vegetation, goes through that and into the roots and kills it from the root up. So it doesn't leave that residual in the soil. You do have to be very careful with some products that will leave residuals. Like IMOX is a very good product for spraying your clover, chicory, alfalfa plots. It'll kill almost everything except those three, but the residuals that leaves in the ground will not allow you to do brassicas for up to 18 months, 9 to 18 months. So, you'd be real disappointed if you sprayed clover and then fall, you decide you want to put some brassicas in there and they don't come up. Well, that's probably why. So read the label. Anytime you use anything, read the label, make sure what the residuals are, if there are any, and what it's going to present for problems down the road. So
when I hear you talk about all these different product names, it's confusing. I mean, how do all right? So I get this. Soil sample first. Yep, you've driven that home. I accept that. Next thing is, kill off what's there, the weeds and stuff. Spray it with Roundup, get it all cleaned up. But when it comes time to decide what you're going to put in there, as far as what the food plot is going to be, how do I know? How do I make that decision? What do I base it on?
There's a lot of things you can base it on. So I tell people, don't plant what you already have in the area, Some people want to do soybeans and corn, but if you got soybeans and corn in 100-acre fields around you, give them something they don't have. Give them the brassicas. Give them the clovers. They do have hay fields, but hay fields aren't all clover. Our resurrection clover, I've had great success with that in the spring. I've got pictures of there's 35 deer in a springtime established resurrection clover plot. So it really depends on what you have in your area, what you're trying to do. If you want to establish that 365-day food source, you would go with a perennial. If you wanted for the fall food source like that, high protein, high nutrients, brassicas are great for that. You can put them in August, and they mature in 35 to 45 days. So you're prime time for October, November. They've got a ton of food for them through the late season. So it really depends on how you're going to hunt your property, what you're trying to do for the deer. I have some people that do just clover because they have a small plot and they don't have the equipment to do anything but mow it. That's great. Clover and chicory is a great attractant for the deer. It's 365 days a year. It's very easy to maintain. It takes very minimal fertilizer to do clover because establishes its own nitrogen. So you could put some potash on it in the fall when you're done hunting, and then you're off and you're running for spring. It really depends on how much work you want to put into it also. A lot of people get into the no-till now, which is real popular, and it's a great idea because you're not breaking your organic matter down in the soil as quickly. But if you are overwhelmed with weeds, it's hard to do that because you can't get through the vegetation with your drill if it's too thick. So that's a lot of information, I guess, real quick. Sorry.
No, that's good. No, it's all good information. So, in some of these things we've talked about before, but I'm going to follow up because not everybody hears every show. I know that's a shame, but not everybody hears every minute of every show. So, how big should a food plot be? Are we better off to put a full acre food plot in, or do we bust it up and put 3 third-acre food plots out there?
My suggestion is find that sweet spot for the deer, right? So if you got 1 acre, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't throw just all clover down. Make 3 different food sources for them. Separate that 1 acre with some Border Patrol screening, so that way they can be in each food plot and not see the other deer, which will make them move through there. You want to block their vision so they can't see through the food plot from the woods. But I would definitely go with like at least 2, if not 3 combinations in a 1 acre food plot. You could do a clover in the center and do a brassicas on the outside and do something like a climatize or a crop duster on the other end. Eventually they're going to want to go to the clover, but they will stop and browse in the other 2 first, and it just keeps them there longer. It gives them something to, they'll get bored eating one thing, so they will travel and they'll get something else. And nobody wants to eat the same ice cream 300 days a week or 300 days a year. They want a variety. So
that Border Patrol gets how tall?
Oh man, generally it's 8 to 10 feet tall. I had some get established to 14 foot last year. It was remarkable.
So it's a screen. It's a screen then.
Yeah. Yep. It's a screening. It's got sorghum in it, which is the main structure for it. And that's where you get your height. But we've also got peas and we've got rape and we've got soybeans in there. So it serves as a food source also. The birds like the sorghum when it tassels out because it has tons of seeds like corn does. So the smaller birds, they'll knock those down on the ground, and the bigger birds will eat them up, and the deer will even eat it. So it works great for both. Like I say, the screening, the safety security for the deer that they feel when they're inside that screening, but yet it gives them a food source to eat on also. And they love peas. They'll go right in there, and those peas will crawl up the sorghum, which brings them off the ground a little bit, and the deer will go in there and just pound them down when it's early fall.
Well, the reason I bring it up is I'm always worried about sneaking into a food plot, sneaking into a blind. I feel like, every critter, every deer in the woods knows I'm there, but if you had that Border Patrol, if you had some kind of a screen, you actually could sneak in there as long as you were downwind.
Oh, sounds like you need to be quieter, Mike.
That could be it, too.
No, you're 100% right. Thank you for touching on that. That screening is ideal for concealment for walking in and out of your blind. We have customers that do that 12 to 14 foot wide, and then they cut a path right out of the center of it, and they walk right to their blind, and it grows. They'll put it right around their blind. It grows up to the bottom of their blind. And I mean, they're like the invisible man walking in and out of there. The deer, if they hear you or smell you, but they can't put their eyes on you, they may jump up and they may run 15, 20 yards, but you've had that before where you spook that doe on your way to your blind and she jumps and runs 20 yards and turns around and stares at you, right?
Yep.
Now you're in the stare down for the next 20 minutes because nobody wants to move and get busted. So if you can eliminate that sight factor, they will relax so much faster and come back into that food plot if they even leave that food plot. So that's a great benefit for it. I do the same thing. I use the Border Patrol. I will actually plan it and leave myself a path that I can drive my Rangers through.
Rich, listen, I'm out of time. I got to let you go. I'm out of time. Always a wealth of information. I appreciate our conversations. The website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. And we will check in with Rich Chrzan in the next few weeks to see where we should be at in our food plotting journey. Gary Morgan after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name's Mike Avery. So glad to have you along with us. You can follow me online if you want. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'm very active on Facebook. I do some stuff on Instagram. Also do a lot of, a couple times a week, live videos on YouTube and Facebook as well. And I put the podcast version of the show up on... There's actually, thank you, Jonathan. But of course, the main focus is the radio show, and you can hear the radio show on 33 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WBCK in Battle Creek. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC. That's 660 AM and 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry since 1946. In fact, when I was out there in the woods this last season, I had a very high-tech crossbow, but on that crossbow, I put a Boning quiver because I wanted that connection to this Michigan company, this Michigan archery tradition. Whether you're a traditional archer, a compound archer, a crossbow hunter, or whether you shoot target archery, Boning has a product for you. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com. I mentioned in the first segment that it's a reminder that May is the time to apply for a Michigan bear and elk tag. I have a lot of people approaching me saying, hey, how do I apply? Where do I apply to, and how do I do this? And the main question is, what should I expect from a Michigan bear hunt if I go with a guide, if I go with an outfitter? Well, I can answer that question because I've hunted with several, but I thought, you know what? Why not get it from an expert himself, one of the sources themselves, Gary Morgan of Wild Game Dynasty, wildgamedynasty.com, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Gary, welcome back. How are you?
Good. How about you today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Hey, it looks like your turkey season's going well.
Hey, every once in a while, we get super duper lucky, and yesterday was that day, and today I went out to see if I could fill my tag. It's early, but my first day out, we just we heard them gobble, but they haven't showed up yet. So. Well,
that's more than anybody the benefit being an outfitter, the benefits of patience, persistence, and sticking with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're having a good time either way, and I've got my thermocell, so I'm paying for that one, too.
I noticed the other day when I was out there for the first time, I started to see mosquitoes. I always call this the mosquito season, and they're starting to show up, aren't they?
They sure are. That and the black flies, and it's just everything but the turkeys today, I guess.
Gary, what I know you can't speak for all bear guides in Michigan, but from your operation, you hunt in the northern lower and you hunt in the U. What can somebody expect from a reputable bear hunting guide here in Michigan?
Well, like you just alluded to, I'm speaking on my own behalf. I want to hope that I'm speaking on most everybody's behalf because I'm going to speak from the heart and based off our experiences for the last 11 or 12 years of doing some hardcore hunts. As you said, we do some in the northern lower end, that Red Oak area and the Newberry Bear Management. You get a couple of camps up there now. So people should expect, let me kind of back up. Really what you should do is do some contacts out to maybe one or two guides or outfitters that they're looking at and ask for some references. Ask for a few names, and I save names, and I ask people, hey, can I use your name if somebody wants to, reach out to somebody as a reference? So we use that same way you would when you're buying or purchasing something that's really important, a little bit expensive, different things. You want to deal with somebody you can trust. And, hey, as well as I, and as well as anybody that's looking in for a bear tag, it takes a long time in the state of Michigan. It takes quite a few years, especially if you're looking for that first or even that second hunt. And all the others put in, the last thing you need is to have it be spoiled by maybe something that just didn't go very well, or maybe some broken promises or something like that, or some assumptions that just didn't go well. So,
yeah, I've had trips ruined by bad outfitters, not here in Michigan, but I have had bad outfitters. I like your suggestion of getting references. I would also go one step further, and I'd say, look, I want to talk with some of your hunters who didn't get an animal because they're going to be the real litmus test.
Oh yeah, Yes, indeed, absolutely. And so usually what I do is when people sign waivers, and, that's not uncommon. Most valid, situations require that, whether it's hunting or something else. I mean, going on a charter boat fishing for lake trout. So we're no different. And it doesn't mean that we're looking for a way out of a bad situation, but we're not. But this way, in that waiver, it allows for us to have a checkbox that somebody can say, yes, some future potential clients can contact me. And of course, we have their phone number, their email, and so, give them the whole list. And that's what we usually provide is everybody that said yes to it. And I'll put in there, whether they were successful or not. I'm not too worried about whether they were or not. Like you just said, is, hey, they're going to have a lot at stake here. They want to minimize any, even just some miscommunications. Sometimes that's all it is, and but those things can really compound themselves into maybe sour grapes.
We're talking with Gary Morgan of Wild Game Dynasty, wildgamedynasty.com. He is in the Michigan turkey woods this morning, but he's also a bear hunting guide. I've got him on the show now. We got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk more about this process of what to expect from a Michigan bear hunting guide. May is the time to apply for your Michigan bear tag. What can you expect? Should you be reaching out to those people now? Absolutely. I think contact them now before you apply for the tag. That way, if you're lucky and you get it, all will be good. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY 1240 AM 100.7 FM. And you can hear us in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. As always, I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now, but it's the same knife that I used to, it's the same knife that I used to notch the license for my successful turkey hunt a few days ago. It's the same knife I used to breast out that bird. It's the same knife I used in the kitchen to kind of clean those breasts up a little bit and get them ready for the crock pot. Their website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. Now, the reason I was on that property is kind of a series of events. I was looking for another property to hunt. I reached out to my friend Gary Morgan of Wild Game Dynasty. Gary knew a land management guy. The land management guy knew the landowner. The landowner invited me on to hunt. But I would not have even started that journey if not Gary Morgan had put me in touch with those guys. And Gary, I appreciate that very much.
Hey, you're very welcome. It's like anything. All of us hunters and fishermen, we have a strong network of people that just want to help each other. And that's the coolest thing is just running across people. You might run into them at the coffee shop or wherever, but or a lot of times, somebody sees you buying a gun at Jay's or something and you beg them not to tell your wife, so then they become your friends.
Oh, that too, yeah. So Gary, and we're talking about bear hunts because May is the time to apply. We're not talking about hound hunts. We're talking about bait hunts. Just so I'll make that clarification there. So the outfitter will, in most cases, provide you baited stands, and the outfitter will bait those stands in preparation of your hunt, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I would say kind of a continuation of what we were just discussing a bit ago is, find that outfitter, find that guide that matches your desire, your setup requirements per se, your personalities. And it's not that he or she has to adapt them to fit you. Find the one that already does it. Find the one that's willing to do that. What is that? It might just be a number of things. So a lot of people, just for whatever the reason, maybe the job they had, or maybe it just runs in their family or whatever, they've got a knee replacement, a bad knee or a bad hip. They can't walk a mile in the woods, but they're a damn good hunter, and they just, they need some help. And not all guides and outfitters, want to get something in close. And, maybe they want to get back in off the beaten path quite a bit. So that's not for everybody.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to hinder the success rate or anything like that, but that's, little things like that. And there's many other things. I guess if I were to turn the table from my perspective to the hunter, is a checklist for them would be is to, once they get in camp, have an open mind, understand maybe that not everything is a scripted situation. Most hunters know that. Almost all hunters know that. So, know that they have to adapt to, they have to learn to do something that they may not have totally expected, but when they hear what the request is, if it's reasonable, then, I guess the biggest thing, if I were to offer the biggest thing, and it might not have anything to do with the guide or outfitter, it has everything to do with the hunter, in my opinion, would be stay till you can't see or shoot safely. And that's going to take you, obviously, to the shooting time, to the bitter end. But, some people kind of leave when maybe they could have stayed there a little bit longer. And that's probably maybe a pet peeve of mine. And I bring that up because, I've had some wonderful people in camp. And, sometimes that just isn't emphasized enough, meaning that, it happens when people leave early.
Yeah.
But,
a lot of bear have been allowed to live because a hunter left the blind maybe 10 minutes earlier than what. And I get it. If you're new to bear hunting, you're out there in the Yup, you're out there in the northern lower. It's kind of an intimidating thing. The adrenaline's high. It's getting dark. There are bears around. There's a tendency to slip out while it's still a little bit light, but don't. Wait it out.
Don't is absolutely it. So we encourage people to, we really press the issue of bring the weapon of their choice, and that gets discussed. So we make sure that, they're a matchup to where their setup is going to be. But a lot of people today have the ability to carry a sidearm as an extra, confidence builder, if nothing else. And if they have the permit to do so, we encourage that. We don't discourage it. We encourage it. And it most likely won't be their weapon to hunt with, but it gives them an opportunity to feel, just a little bit better about the situation they're in.
Yeah.
And we try to have them have a good feeling from the time they get there, whether it's their food that we have a gentleman that cooks for us, and he prepares great meals. That's important. The lodging, we provide that. That's important.
But the main thing is, Jerry and Gary, and I'm out of time, is reach out to your outfitter, your guide ahead of time. I recommend Gary Morgan is one of the guys I recommend from Wild Game Dynasty, the website wildgamedynasty.com. That's wildgamedynasty.com. But reach out now. Make the contact before you get that tag. Gary Morgan of Wild Game Dynasty, appreciate your time. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to talk a little fishing, we're going to talk some more bear hunting, and we're going to talk about Minute of Angle in this week's Ask Avery segment, coming up in hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I say that to make the distinction between this content and a lot of the other good content that's out there, but in a podcast form. Outdoor Magazine Radio has been on the air a long, long time. It's on more stations than, well, people have tried it to do a syndicated outdoor radio show. And there are some hurdles that come up along the way, but I have been able to, with God's guidance, and the help of a lot of friends, been able to negotiate and avoid and jump over and sometimes crawl under some of those hurdles. So I'm still on the air. And that makes the show unique in a lot of ways. And I lately feel the need to point out that distinction. I would encourage you, because the show it's recorded, it's distributed, it is uploaded, it is syndicated as a radio show. And I would encourage you, if you can, to listen on your local radio station. If you can't hear all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, isn't it nice to know that there is a podcast version of the radio show available? You can hear that podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page, on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple Music, yada, 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 Stitcher, Player, Deezer, Odyssey, even on YouTube. But I do like podcasting. I sometimes I come across as a guy who doesn't like podcasting because I'm a broadcast snob. That's not the case. I embrace podcasting. I encourage you to check out podcasting. If you have a story you want to tell, if you are an expert in some area and want to share your knowledge and expertise, podcasting is probably the single best way to do it today because it's inexpensive and easy. So I do podcasts in addition to the podcast version of the radio show. I do monthly podcasts for Polar Craft Boats, Primal Outdoors, Offshore Tackle, and Angler Quest Boats. And when we're done here in the studio recording this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, we will record this month's Angler Quest podcast. That's one of my I look forward to them all, but I always look forward to the Angler Quest podcast and would encourage you to keep an ear out for that. Speaking of fishing, speaking of being on the water, I'd like to think of May as the traditional beginning of the boating season somewhat, but we see a lot of anglers on the water this time of year as well. Joe Marion is a friend of mine who has more experience on the water than anybody I know because he spent a career in the Coast Guard. And how cool is that? He grew up on the water. He spent his career on the water. He retired from the Coast Guard, and he's back on the water again as a charter captain. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk about, well, whatever comes to mind this time around. Joe, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Mike. Congratulations on your turkey.
Oh, thanks. I had to put some time in for that one. But I'm stubborn, and it pays off sometime. And listen, I've been on your Facebook page, and I see you've been having some success in the outdoors as well.
It's been a good spring so far. It's been a cold, slow one coming, but believe it or not, the Kings actually showed up probably 2 weeks earlier than normal.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
Yes. Usually we don't see them until like mid-May, and they showed up the last week of April. I contributed to it. We had a very horrible ice fishing season with lack of ice and not much ice, and so the water was never cold enough to really set up and freeze, and then we started warming up, but we stayed at low temps, not freezing temps, and so therefore the lake is a little bit warmer now than what it was last year at this time or the year before that, and so therefore we got more fish moving into the area. We had a great smelt dipping season this spring, so that's helped contribute also.
A lot of areas had a good smelt run this year. We haven't heard that for a long time.
I know, it was surprising. We get them here in Ludington for a couple of days, and if you hit it right, you do good. And it lasted almost 2 weeks this year, and it was phenomenal and surprising.
So smelt run, you're into Kings already, and you've been finding morels too. That's a pretty good spring.
Yes, it is.
Tell me, Joe, why, after spending your entire career on the water, did you retire and decide to stay on the water? Weren't you sick of it at this point?
I actually started charter boats before I joined the Coast Guard. I started first mating when I was 14 years old, got my license when I was 18, And if you remember the 80s, the mid-'80s, we had the BKD, the bacterial kidney disease, in all the salmon and some other fish, but the salmon population really took a hit. Charters dove. I was running 2-3 trips a day all summer long, and then in 85 going into 86, we went down to doing 2 or 3 trips a week, and it was, what do I do? I panicked, so that's when I joined the Coast Guard. My passion has always been fishing. I'm addicted to it. Addicted to salmon fishing. I mean, I remember being on the ocean and having dreams of sitting in the back of the charter boat watching the rods. And I couldn't get back to it soon enough. And then, it was the occasional breaks from the Coast Guard, taking leave, and the weekends that I could do it, I ran a few trips. And then when I retired, I was able to have more time to be able to put into it, and I had some good friends. A real good friend, Gary Smith, who owned Rodmaster Charters at the time, and he encouraged me to go fishing with him and run as his first mate, and I reactivated my license in 2013 and been running ever since as a captain. And even though he retired and sold the boat, and I'm now running with a new captain or a new boat, fly a lot. It's something I look forward to now, but at the end of August, not so much.
I hear that. So listen, you say you reactivated your license? Did you have to take the class and the test again? Not that it would be a problem. You could teach the class, but what was that process?
Well, I did. I drove through. I used to hunt down in Richmond, Ohio. So we drive through Toledo and Cleveland area. And 2010, 2011, I thought, heck, might as well. Gary's been on me. I'll try to redo my license. And so I stopped in there and just took the test a couple of times. I passed. There's 5 parts. I passed 4 parts with no problem. The nav rules part, you have to have a 76. And I missed that question. One question on the nav rules every time to keep me at 73. And I could not get past it. And so I finally said, I did it 2 or 3 times, and then I was like, what am I going to do about it? So then they offered a course here in town, so I went in there and I took the course. I did help the instructor teach the course, help with navigation and everything else, and took the test that way, passed it. And I sent my credentials in to reactivate my license. Well, at that time, I thought it was just to start my license or renew it or get a new license because I had not used it. It was inactive for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I had Coast Guard time. I've been on 2 378 footers, a 210 on the ocean. I'm going to throw an ocean endorsement on it. So I threw that on there, and I sent the package in. A month later, I get a phone call from a petty officer at the licensing, and she goes, "What are you trying to do, Joe?" I said, "Well, I thought I had my license before, and I thought I had ocean time." She goes, "We could jump through the hoops, or you can just say no to the ocean endorsement. I'll just strike the yes, and your license is back in service again." I was, "Oh, okay." So actually, I did take the test, and it was helpful. Like I said, the nav rules was, even though I kept nav rules current throughout the Coast Guard career, it is a hard test to pass, regardless if you do it every day or not. So it's always good to have a little bit of help, and there's always those courses. I know they get more expensive. The first time I took it in 1985, it was $400. This time it was $1,100. But it is definitely well worth it because you do get some information that you don't think about on a daily basis. So
yeah, it is. For me, it was a great experience. I have visions of you out there in the ocean on one of those big ships or boats or whatever, trying to figure out how to troll a meat rig behind it.
I'll tell you, we don't use meat rigs, but we caught a lot of fish out there trolling. When I was on the 210 out on the West Coast, we do patrols down in the Sea of Cortez between Cabo San Lucas and Mazatlan. And on weekends, we'd set fish call, about noon and trolling for 4 or 5 hours. And you have 4 or 5, 6 guys, 10 guys back there trolling. And every time they saw a grass mat, they'd turn the ship, go by the grass mat, and we catch a couple mahi out of it. And those mahi-mahi come on the deck, get filleted, and go right on the grill. You couldn't get anything better.
Man, I wish I would have been in the Coast Guard. It sounds like it was a riot. hey, hang tight, Joe. Hey, by the way, what does Lialot, is there a website for Lialot Charters, or is it a Facebook page only?
Both, lialot.com, and then Lialot Charters is on Facebook.
Perfect. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll talk more with Joe Marion about fishing, about staying safe on the water. He's got some great stories. That one I'd never heard before. That was a good one. We'll take a break. And then later in the hour, Cody Norton of the DNR talks about the process of applying for a Michigan bear tag. I've told you a couple times, this is the time to do that. And this week's Ask Avery segment wraps up with what is minute of angle, and the guy who's going to answer it is one of the best extreme long-range shooters in the world. That's coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. Always a pleasure to have you along with us. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including, what do we got? The Twister, 92.1 WTWS in Houghton Lake. In Holland, we've got WHTC, 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And north of the bridge, let's go to the Sioux. News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. It makes a lot of sense. Why spend a bunch of money on buying different sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and then snap on and zip on an outer liner and completely change the camo pattern? I mean, it literally takes less than a minute to change your pattern, change the skin for the season you're in. And if you've been having problems finding them big enough, VersaSkins now makes plus sizes like 4X, 5X. I think I even heard of a 6X. Check it out, though. Go to the website, versaskins.com, to see for yourself. That's versaskins.com. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head over to lialotcharters.com, and also look for, and they're on Facebook as well, and also you can look for Joe Marion on Facebook as well. Joe's a friend of mine. I first met him when he was at Coast Guard Station Saginaw River many, many years ago, but he spent a career on the water. He was with the Coast Guard for many years. He retired out of Ludington. He's living on the west side of the state now, still very active on the water. Joe, you mentioned before in the first segment here that the Kings are up here about 2 weeks early. Where are you finding them this time of year? Are you going way offshore? You right up by the river mouth, or what?
35 to 45 foot of water, fishing with 2, 3, 4, and 5 color cores. Riggers down about 20 feet.
It's
high divers out 50. It's real short.
Isn't it nice to find them in shallow water in close?
It is. It saves on the fuel bill. Saves on your arm cranking.
Let me ask you this. If you can reach...
They do fight.
Well, they do, yeah, especially in that shallow water, right?
Yes.
If you can get... You're in 35 feet of water. If you can get to the fish with downriggers, why run 5 colors of lead core? I mean, lead is... that thing's out there a mile, and then you got to crank forever to get them in.
Different presentations. Some days they want lead core. Sometimes they want downriggers. Sometimes they just want divers. You don't put all the presentations out there, you'll never know what they are, and you will go fishless.
So when you head out in the morning, how many rods are you running? What's the spread and what's the setup? Walk me across the boat.
Well, it depends on if it's my boat. We got 3 guys on the boat. I'm running 8 rods, 9 if I can figure out where I'm going to stick the 9th one. But with an 18.5 foot polar craft, that's you get kind of crowded. But I'll run my 2 downriggers down, one with a temp probe and speed probe, lets me know how fast I'm going. And I'll put those down about 22, 24 feet down with a couple spoons. Then I'll throw my wire divers out. I'll use my high divers only, settings 3. And I'll run those out around 45, 50 feet with spoons. Everything I'm running right now are spoons this year. And then this time of year, because I moved offshore from the Browns, I'm not running many Rapalas or body baits. And then my copper or my cores I put out, my 2 and a 4 on one side and a 3 and a 5 on the other, and they all have spoons. If it's cloudy and overcast, which is the best day in those shallow water because the fish are less spooky, they do tend to gravitate towards the darker spoons. I run the raspberry carbon 14s, the black and golds, black and silvers, and seems to work out pretty good. But you get them out, spread out there, and some days Saturday I caught 4. I had 4 fish on, 1 rigger bite and three on boards, nothing on my divers. And then on Sunday we had 7 fish. One was about a 5-pound Cisco. He had actually hit a 150 copper, a super slim from Dreamweaver. And then I had 6. We had 6 kings. Had one diver bite, 1 rigger bite, and the rest were on lead core.
6 kings. Wow, 6 kings first week in May. That's pretty cool.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
I want to step back. Your lead core, they're going on the outside, both sides on the outside?
Yes. And I always run my higher cores to the far outside. So my 2 will be the far outside, then the 4 comes inside of that. 3 on the out on the starboard side, 3's on the far outside, 5's on the inside. That way I can bring my outside boards in over top of my deeper coppers or deeper cores.
All right, you spend a lot of time on the water. You a lot of hours looking at rods, a lot of hours thinking about setups. Do you ever get tangled?
You're not fishing if you don't get tangled.
Even you.
Yes.
Are you running the lead core on the outside? Is that on the small boards? Or are you running big skis?
I'm running small boards. I'll run the 2s and the 3s. I'll probably run on a little yuck board or the smaller walleye boards. Once I get into the higher cores, the 4s, 5s, and 6s, I'll run the bigger walleye boards, or I'm starting to run more of the Ninja boards from Dreamweaver. And those Ninja boards, they'll pull. I have no problem pulling up to a 350 copper with those once I get out the deeper water.
And do you set those up so where they release and go and turn around backwards and just pull them in, or do you bring them in and take the board off the line? How do you do that?
I bring them in and take the board off the line. I prefer it that way. You're fighting the board, the fish is fighting the board, and it helps keep a more constant pressure when the fish is more angry. Then when you get in and get the board off, then you got that time to get the last length of line in, and then they go berserk as they're right behind the boat, but you got a direct line to them. So I think keeping the board hooked up and having it still pull while you're reeling in keeps an even pressure on the fish.
So why a speed and temp probe? Because you've got your speed at the surface on your GPS, and you've got your surface temp from your electronics too. Why do you worry about, or why are you concerned about what's down below?
That's where the fish are at. I could lose every piece of equipment on my boat, and I wouldn't worry about it except for my speed and temp probe. I want to know what my lures are doing under the surface. You have currents, especially here in Ludington. We have the shelf out there. And those shelves generate a lot of currents up wells and wind generated different directions. And you could be going one direction and your lures are not working because you need to bump up. You have to do 3.5, almost 4 miles an hour at the GPS speed because the down speed, the current's racing with you.
So you can see a significant difference then.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I don't know if you've the experience of going out offshore in the middle of summer, July, chasing scum lines for steelhead in the spring. Those water breaks out there. Those are some tremendous surface currents that you can see that you don't pay attention to underneath on your graph. And when you're looking at your graph, you can sometimes see that rolling water down there. It's got to be doing something to your lures, but until you get a speed probe down there, you can't tell. But you get offshore and you see those temperature breaks out there where we chase steelhead, where one side of it's 70 degrees and the other side is 52 degrees, and it's got all that debris and bugs and and matted grass and picnic tables and trash cans and everything else floating in it, those steelhead are out there picking those bugs off, and you get out there like that and you troll through those, but you can see the whirlpools. You can see the current, those two temperatures hitting together. Still does it down below, even though you can't see it.
Have you had to run offshore to that scum line the last few years? Or you've been able to stay in closer with your charters?
Last few years, we stayed pretty close. We even last year, I don't think I made a more than a 10-mile run in any direction, north, south, or west. But I remember a couple of times a few years ago that had to make a 22-mile run, and we were up off of Dynasty and out water that was 780, 800 feet deep, and still only fished the top 15 feet.
Well, that makes that 35-foot you're in right now seem even better.
Yes.
Joe, we talked a lot about fishing and a lot about the fun stuff, but I can't let you go, knowing your background, the fact that you like to be education-oriented. We get out there in the big water, and we're having fun, and we relax, and, there's not a care in the world. But like we've said so many times, when you're out there in the water, when things go south, they can go south fast, don't they?
Oh, yes. When it goes in that direction and you're not ready for it, things compound and make it more frustrating. And the more frustrating I get, the more mistakes I make. And I'm sure everybody else is in that same boat. And when that happens, you get flustered.
So obviously, the best situation is just to avoid these problems in the future. Avoid them before they happen, if you can. So preparation, thinking ahead.
Preparation, thinking about what your equipment is, how to use your equipment when something were to happen, and think about maybe an unusual thing. If you hear a story from somebody, I was out on the water, my boat started sinking, and you can sit there and think, what would I do in that situation? And if you have a plan formulated in your head before it ever happens, you have a better way of tackling it and a better way to get through it.
What's the number one concern? What's your number one advice to somebody? Say, look, maybe they're all right. So somebody new to fish in big water. What do you want them to keep in mind as far as a safety perspective?
Keep your head level, and when you first have a problem, notify the Coast Guard, notify the Sheriff's Department, call 911 on your cell phone. At least let them know you are experiencing a problem and you're trying to fix it. Let them know where you're at, how many people are on the boat, that you have life jackets on. Get ready, get prepared, fight the problem, but let someone know first. They can always start in your direction and get turned around and go back home without ever getting to you because you fixed it. But they'll be that much closer when that situation gets worse to being able to help you.
Yeah, I think people are... I know I would be reluctant to call in the cavalry, but you got to do what you got to do, right?
Those guys are sitting there at the lunch table waiting and chomping to go.
They're sitting there drinking coffee, just waiting for you to come out and rescue you. Listen, Joe, it's always a pleasure. It sounds like the fishing is great. I would encourage people to go to the website liealot.com. That's liealot.com. Book a trip with Joe or one of the other captains. Check out his Facebook page as well. He's a very interesting guy with some great stories. Liealot.com. Always a pleasure, Joe. We'll talk again.
Have a great day, Mike.
All right. Joe Marion right here on Outdoor Magazine. We will take a break. When we come back, Cody Norton of the DNR. Advice on how to apply for a Michigan bear tag. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. You can hear us on the other side of the state in Tawas, WIOS 1480 AM 106.9 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, go to the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. You'll see what I mean. Very cool product. Family-owned, Michigan-based. Doesn't get any better than that. Whack 'em and plack 'em, nontypicalinnovations.com. Well, I've been telling you that May is the time to apply for a Michigan Bear Tag. And I will apply for a Michigan Bear Tag. And I will apply for a Michigan Elk Tag. I will not get a Michigan Elk Tag. I will probably not get a Michigan Bear Tag this year, even though I will apply for Newberry in the third season, but I will almost certainly get one next year. Unless I can get Cody Norton to pull some strings. Cody is a DNR wildlife biologist. One of his areas of expertise is our Michigan bear population, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Cody, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So can you get me that bear tag?
I wish. I think I'd have a bear tag every year if I could do that.
So May is the time to apply. What do you want us to keep in mind, Cody? What should we remember?
That's a great question. Obviously, figuring out what bear management unit you want to hunt in and what hunt period you want to hunt in, especially in the UP where we've got, like you mentioned, 3 different hunt periods. Making sure that you pick your first hunt choice, kind of the one that you're really going for, and we should have drawing results will be available June 26th. So you need to have your applications in by June 1st.
You have decreased, the powers that be, have decreased tags in some areas. Did you actually increase them in some spots, though?
Yeah, so the Baldwin unit in the northwestern northern lower, that one actually had a 16% increase in license quotas. We had licenses stay the same in, I think, 4 of the units, and then we had decreases in the rest. And I think we talked about that a little bit the last time I was on, where we might be trying to actually harvest the same number of bears or more bears, but because we've gone above our desired harvest over the last few years and had that increased hunter success rate, then that means that we're trying to reduce licenses to hit that desired harvest more accurately.
Are bears up and around out of the den all across the state, even the Yup now?
Yes. Yep. We've got a couple collared bears up here. Both of them are out of the dens and moving around, and we're certainly getting reports from the public, too, of bears out and about.
You say collared. Why do you put a collar on them?
Yeah, so right now, at different times we have research projects going on where we're collaring bears and trying to, answer specific questions about them. Right now, most of the bears that are collared in the state are for our surrogate sow program. So we try to keep anywhere from 4 to 6 sows collared each year in case we come into possession of any orphan cubs where, a sow gets hit on the road and there's orphans that they really can't survive until we get into July. So if we can, we'll try to put them with a sow that we have collared. And then we're also able to get, a lot of valuable information from those collared bears. Starting to put out GPS collars, getting a lot more detailed information too. So we can estimate home range size and habitat use and things like that.
I've seen you guys crawl into these bear dens and put collars on. That's kind of an interesting, it's got to be an interesting experience.
It is. It can be a little nerve-wracking at times, going head first into a den. You got to trust the person that has your feet. But no, it's great getting to interact with them and get hands-on. And, we collect a ton of measurements, blood samples, genetic samples, kind of anything, collect as much information as we can from each of the bears that we're working on.
I live down in the middle part of the lower peninsula, mid-Michigan, and we're seeing bears now. Good buddy of mine's got a bear behind the house on his food plots he's getting on camera. Are these primarily that we see downstate? Are these young boars, young males that are getting pushed out during the breeding season? Is that what we're seeing down here, Cody?
Yeah, a lot of times that we call those dispersers or dispersing individuals. So, obviously cubs are born in the den. They den again with their sow, their mom, the following winter as yearlings. And then once we hit that following breeding season, typically they're getting kicked out And so they're trying to find their way. Usually female yearlings, will disperse less distance, sometimes take over part of their mom's, former home range, where then a lot of times the males are going to go farther and they're going to be showing up, in those areas where either just new areas or in your case, areas that aren't claimed already by larger boars that they'd have to compete with.
And again, a reminder, we have through the end of May to apply for a Michigan Bear Tag?
Yep, June 1st is the last day, so make sure you get your application in by that.
June 1st. And are you heading back up to White River to hunt bears anytime soon?
I'm not this year, but definitely hoping to be able to put something together in the near future.
Excellent. I'm going up there in just a few weeks. I'll be up there hunting with Ron in early June, so maybe sometime our paths will cross and we'll see each other up there, Cody.
Yeah, that sounds great, Mike.
All right, Cody Norton of the Michigan DNR, the website michigan.gov/DNR. You can apply for a license at that website, on that website, michigan.gov/DNR. You can use the DNR app on your phone. If you don't have that on your phone, I would encourage you to put it on. It's very useful. And if you want to go old school, you can walk into any license agent and apply that way. But it's a lot easier just to do it on your phone. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment, talking about minute of angle with one of the best shooters in the world. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM and north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT 600 AM 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by our friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way the Ask Avery segment works, this is your chance to ask me a question. Best way to get that question to me, send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It can be a question you want me to answer directly or pass along to somebody else. That's what Tim Licious did. Tim sent me an email. He said, hey, I've heard you talk about Brenton rifles, and you mentioned that they are accurate to MOA standard. I know about MOA just enough to be dangerous, but I've always heard that used in relationship to calibers and cartridges. What I understand was that the more flat shooting calibers would produce less MOA over a certain distance. He says, is it the firearm or is it the cartridge that achieves MOA? I would just like clarification on this. Well, to answer this question, I have brought in one of the best extreme long-range shooters in the world. His name is Paul Phillips. Paul, I appreciate you jumping on board to help out with this. So what is the answer to this? Well, first of all, what is MOA, minute of angle?
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Yeah. MOA is just an acronym for minute of angle, where the minute is not a measure of time, but just nothing rather than 1/60th of a degree. So not to get into too much science here, but common knowledge is just basically when people say a minute of angle is worth 1 inch at 100 yards. That's typically what people say. So it has nothing to do with the rifle or the caliber or the bullets. It's just nothing more than a measure of, it's an angle measurement. And, there's two common measurements that most people follow, and that's either mils or minute of angle. And they're just both, it's just a measurement of angle, basically.
So it's a measurement of angle. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Yep. So basically it's just how they measure the angles. So real quick, so, you have 360 degrees in a circle. Most people know what that means, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to go 180 degrees, you just turn around and go backwards, right? So each degree, there's 60 minutes. And then when you're on your scope, that 60 minutes is what we're talking about, a measure of angle. A minute of angle is the measurement of that angle. So there's 1/60th of 1 degree. So when you're at your rifle range and you're setting it in, and you have your clicks on your scope, most people have minute of angle scopes, and there's 4 clicks per 1 minute. So if you're at 100 yards and you click 1 click, that's a 1/4 inch at 100 yards.
So 4 clicks is usually 1 minute of angle or 1 inch. Now, if you want to get really technical, the technical measurement is 1.047 inches in 1 minute of angle. But we just usually round it off to 1
Let's stick with an inch.
for 1 minute of angle. Yep.
Okay, so
that's all it is. It's real simple to just go with 1 inch per 1 minute of angle.
Gotcha.
So your scope. And they're usually numbered. Your scopes are all numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what those are, minutes of angle.
Okay, I got you there. So a broader question, though, is minute of angle, is accuracy is more of a function of the gun or of the cartridge you're shooting, or is it a combination of both?
It can be both, yeah, but typically accuracy is, there's a lot of elements that go into accuracy and precision, but typically when we start talking about consistency with all your fasteners and torquing, consistency with your loading with the same amount of powder, the same weight grain bullets. We start talking about lots of bullets when they're made, concentricity, all that stuff starts to play. But I like to say consistent. Consistency, the way you hold the gun, how much pressure you put in the butt plate, your loads, make sure they're the same velocity. That's where all the accuracy comes in.
So what is your next goal? What are you trying to shoot next, Paul?
Well, I'm going to be going to Kansas in a couple weeks for the next Kansas match. And then after that, I'm going to be going to Texas, conquer the castle in Texas. And I'm going to do a seminar in Poland at the end of the month, which should be interesting.
And what range? What's the next goal in distance you want to shoot?
Well, I mean, for the personal record stuff, we're going to try to push 5 miles. And that's going to take, you're talking about minutes of angle, that's going to take us a prediction of 1,200 minutes of angle. Yeah. And you divide that by 60 and you get 20 degrees, right? 20-degree angle.
Oh, Paul, you're something else. I would encourage people to find you on Instagram. He is ELR Shooter, ELR_shooter, and the website for Paul is globalprecisiongroup.LLC.com. Paul, I appreciate you jumping on and answering that question. I knew you were the right guy to get.
Yep, no worries. If anybody has that question, you just Google it. Google will tell you. Pretty good information.
I'd rather have Paul Phillips answer it than Google anytime. All right, Paul, we'll talk again soon. Yeah, my pleasure. Yep. Paul Phillips, one of the best extreme long-range shooters in the world. You can find him on Instagram as ELR_shooter, and his website is globalprecisiongroup.LLC.com. And again, a big thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org, at securitycu.org. And thank you, Tim, for sending me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Please feel free, my friends, to do the same. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, we're talking sturgeon, spawning sturgeon in northern Michigan with the Sturgeon General herself.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on Mother's Day weekend. Happy Mother's Day, moms. I said this earlier, and I strongly believe this. You moms are the glue that holds our families together. And we love you very much, so happy Mother's Day. And as I sit here in the studio now, looking at the weather forecast for the weekend, looks like some rain, but it looks like it's going to be, temperatures are going to be nicer. It's finally getting warm. Seems like we've waited a long time this spring to get warm temperatures, and it feels pretty good. And it makes people want to get outdoors. And I don't blame you. You know, I was thinking here at the top of the hour, between hours, I knew who our guest was coming up, and I was thinking about the fact that I've known her for a long, long time, and the fact that she's very, very dedicated. And I have learned over the years to respect more and more as I get older this dedication. I respect people who are willing to have a cause and to stand up for it and to work hard for it. It's so easy to say, you know what, I think, and then just sit back and go back on with your day-to-day world. Or I would like to see, and that's as far as it gets. Brenda Archambo is the Sturgeon General. She's the Sturgeon General. She has that name for a reason, because for many, many years now, she has been the main spokesperson, in my opinion, of protecting our sturgeon here in northern Michigan. And it hasn't been easy, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of hours out in the cold standing on those riverbanks this time of year. But she and the people she works with have really made an impact. And that's why it's always a pleasure to check in with the Sturgeon General herself, Brenda Archambo, and she's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Madam Sturgeon General, how are you?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing great because I think spring is finally
Finally.
And it's warm.
Hey, listen, I don't want to make you sound old because I think you're about the same age as me, but how long have you been working on this whole concept of protecting these giant fish?
I've been in the trenches 28 years, Mike. It's hard to fathom, but we incorporated in 1999 as a nonprofit to set out our mission. But it has been a long time, but in the lifetime of a sturgeon, those 28 years are like, they can live to be 150 of those females or 80 years old for those males. And so in terms of that, we're just nicely getting started, although we are seeing the fruits of our efforts.
What caused you in the first place to go down this path? What was it about these fish and your concerns for them that got you so revved up?
Well, I live at Black Lake, and we have a home place over in Indian River. So the Sheboygan River watershed is like a part of who I am, and the nature and the resources. When I learned, it was in 1995, I learned that the state was developing a management plan for sturgeon. We in fact wanted to be involved in it. But what really got me going was when we learned that there was an inordinate amount of poaching going on our watch. And so that is really what got me going on that. But it was really about, we live here, we see these fish every spring, right? And then we have a limited sport fishery, which is something that's deeply entrenched in our local culture. And so I think the word that comes to mind is passion, that there was a cause, that there was a gap, and we wanted to be a part of the solution.
When you mention poaching, and you've talked about this before, I get hung up on this because I'm thinking, what joy could somebody take in illegally harvesting a fish that is that size and that age? You wouldn't be able to tell anybody about it. You wouldn't be able to share it. It seemed like such a hollow victory. And yet, and I know you're doing a lot to help fight this, but there's still every once in a while I hear about it even today.
Mm-hmm. It's really sad. I think things, through the last couple of decades have changed. And really our program this time of year, because we have multiple programs, has really become an eco-volunteerism opportunity for people in any walk of life who wants to get out on the rivers and in nature and watch spring come to life and see these large adult sturgeon who are vulnerable, that are in the rivers like right now, and they're there because they are there to reproduce. So these are adult fish, they're large fish, And we want to have sustainability in our resources, so we're there to protect them as part of our guarding program, just to be visible and low-key to deter poaching. Now, I think it was more of a generational thing, 15, 20 years ago. Does it still happen? Yes. However, it's become an opportunity to educate and engage and mobilize diverse constituent groups around conservation. And, seeing the sturgeon, which they otherwise normally wouldn't see, right, because they live on lake and river bottoms. And you can see them up close and personal. Plus, the MSU DNR tribal research team is in the river at the same time netting and tagging the fish to collect biological data. And what's really super cool is back in, I think, 2022, we started collecting larval drift sturgeon after they spawn, bringing them back to a nearby streamside hatchery and rearing them, and then stocking those fall fingerlings out in the fall, August or September. We're beginning to see these young fish that we stocked coming back to the river and being a part of the next generation. So That is something that is very heartfelt.
Eco-volunteerism opportunity. That's a pretty interesting title, but you're talking about your sturgeon guarding program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that. I mean, I know about it because we talked before, but what is it exactly? And explain to people why they might want to get involved.
Well, we know that each year out of Black Lake, a percentage of adult fish will migrate upstream to spawn, and at that time they're vulnerable. And what we do is we have a volunteer coordinator who will register volunteers to be a part of Sturgeon Guard. It could be a 3 or a 6 hour shift. And and where we're at is just 2 tracks. There's no houses around. It's in the forest. You're out in the wilderness. And, again, we're there to be visible and low key. And so what our volunteer coordinator does is coordinate volunteers from late April through early June, when these usually 4 different groups of adult sturgeon will come into spawn, just to be visible. And like through the years, have we hampered the poaching? Well, absolutely. Does it still happen? Likely. And so what it has done is it really has brought people from all walks of life the opportunity to get up close and personal with a sturgeon where otherwise they wouldn't. And while we're also protecting them, and the research team is netting them to do pit tags so that we can keep track of the individuals. The last 20-some years, there's been, I believe we've got 1,200 is the count of adult sturgeon, not counting the year classes of fish where we stocked back into the river so that we can have, different year classes and sustainability in the resource. So Sturgeon Guard is a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, when I get done, I want to go up there and be with the people of the sturgeon and just kind of sit with them and have conversations and, have lunch, have a sandwich, get a little bit of sun. And I'm excited. Each year I get giggity when I know that sturgeon are making their way up.
And the river is low enough and clear enough that you can actually see these fish in the water?
Absolutely. We after some of those torrential rains we have had, certainly it's hard to see down through the water, but you take your polarized sunglasses and, we know areas where they congregate and where they spawn. Early on, remember several weeks ago, we got that 80-degree weather. Well, they started moving upstream. Water got about 55 degrees, which is a key factor of migration. Well, then it turned cold and it snowed and that, a lot of them went back out in the lake. We know this because we have RFID technology and antenna arrays throughout the river that will read the tags when the sturgeon go over them. So we know on a given day there are, say, 80 fish in the system. And, maybe there were, like so far this year, 124 sturgeon have been tagged so far in this first run. And we usually get 4 runs. And so there's just things that we've learned through the years of when you can see them, when they're vulnerable, where they congregate. And they'll be in the system here probably through Memorial Weekend. And so
hang tight, hang tight, Brenda. Hang tight. There's a lot more I want to talk to you about. We're talking with Brenda Archambo, the Sturgeon General of SturgeonForTomorrow.org, SturgeonForTomorrow.org. But first, we've got to take a break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Lots more coming up. Stay with us. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN, staying on that side of the state. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM. Let's jump over to the other side of the state in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots. We had Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots on the show earlier. Talking about how this is the time to be working on your food plots, not just soil samples, but spraying off the weeds that are there now, making your plans. What are you going to put in there? Where are you going to put them? How big are the food plots going to be? What shape? There are a lot of different factors to keep in mind here. Food plotting is extremely popular in Michigan ever since in the Lower Peninsula they've banned, the DNR has banned, the use of baiting for whitetails. But food plots is a good option if you can. If you're looking for some help, I recommend Rich Chrzan in Michigan-based Killer Food Plots. Their website is killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. If you're looking for something to do, now that the weather has turned and you want to enjoy this weather, you want to get up north, you want to get outside, you want to have a close interaction with Mother Nature. A lot of things you could do, right? You could go turkey hunting, you could go fishing or whatever. But I want you to consider this one thing. The sturgeon guarding program is going along on the banks of the Black River. And they're keeping an eye on these giant prehistoric spawning fish to protect them, just to keep an eye on, to do research as well. Brenda Archambo, I call her the Sturgeon General because for a long, long time now, she has been actively, intimately, passionately involved in the protection of these fish and education about these fish. And she's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Brenda, you say the sturgeon are in the river now. Conditions are right that they're up in there?
They are. The water finally warmed up after that cold spring, and so they've been waiting a long time. Of course, they don't spawn every year, and so it's on right now. It'll be going on for the next several weeks, and it'll give folks an opportunity to get out and see them in all their glory.
They don't spawn every year. How often do they spawn?
Well, females are 17 to 30 before they will first spawn.
Wow.
And then after that, it'll be once every 4 to 7 years. Males are 12 to 20 years old before they will first spawn. And they will spawn every 2 to 4. Although some of the little guys in our system, we see them every year. We know that from the netting and tagging data that is collected, which is pretty exciting to see almost a 7-foot fish, 130 pounds, and it's like, oh, look, there's a log. Oh, but the log moved. Oh, that's a sturgeon. And people are, especially the children, they just really dig it and eat it up because we're also bringing back sturgeon in the classroom fish who have been in classrooms here since last fall, and they're bringing the fish that they've had in their classroom back to where it was born.
So this sturgeon guarding program is just part of this big overall picture for you.
It is.
What is the reaction? What has the response been? I mean, because most people are never going to see a sturgeon. So how do you get them involved? Excuse me. How do you get them interested in something that they're not likely to see?
Well, I think a lot of it is social media interaction and just doing outreach. I mean, I was in Traverse City on Monday talking about sturgeon. We go to different areas around the state and talk to really hopefully educate, engage, and mobilize many diverse constituent groups around what we do and why and how they can contribute. But I think what's cool is if you put one of these big fish, just a picture with a caption on your wall, it'll be like, oh my gosh, it's not something like you see every day. It's not like, oh, hey, I caught a perch or a walleye. It's like, look at that fish. And I think because they've been around 136 million years, they're threatened in the state of Michigan. There's a movement to, conserve, maybe not, we do protect them during the Sturgeon Guard, but just to get people out in nature and see what it has in store for us and get a little nature therapy. And I think people really leave with more than that they come with when they come and visit us up on the river.
Now, you've got sturgeon there in your backyard, but are we finding them across the state? Are they in other water as well?
They're in all the Great Lakes. There are some areas. What's really cool is several years ago, we began an initiative. We're part of an initiative in the Saginaw Bay region, working with the Conservation Fund and Saginaw Wind to work to rehabilitate the rivers there throughout the Saginaw Bay watershed. And so some of our broodstock is also planted in the rivers there in the Saginaw Bay. And then this year, when we are doing stock out in the fall for Mullet and Black Lake, we retain some of those fish for classrooms, but some of them are also slated to go to the Saginaw Bay watershed, and they will be equipped with telemetry tags so that we can look at their distribution patterns.
Pretty high-tech stuff, Brenda.
It's neat.
You gave me some stats earlier, like how long these fish live, how big they get, and the years between spawning. I'm thinking, how do you ever manage a fish population like this? Walleye, 4 years. You can get walleye to spawn in 2 or 3 years, but you got these sturgeon to have an impact on their population. This is a long-term deal.
Well, it is. It's kind of like planting a tree, right? So, when we started this, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we really didn't think we'd see the fruits of our efforts, but we knew that something needed to be done, that they had been neglected. They were crying out for our help. Something needed to be done. And, as we, through the trenches in the years, following, we just learned so much. We learned that we didn't know a lot about the early life history. Now, 25 years later, we've learned a lot, and that is there are areas of the state that are ripe for rehabilitation. And if we can help, like specifically the Saginaw watershed, because it's a Lake Huron watershed, let's try that. So there's a movement there. There's a movement, of course, in the Lake St. Clair, Detroit River. We have a chapter down there. And so I think the more that you talk about it and beat that drum and continue to educate, eventually people will be interested in mobilize, and then you can get stewardship and advocacy.
You mentioned St. Clair. There is, and you're well aware of this, there is a viable, wonderful, booming sturgeon fishery down there. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talk about a way to get people to interact with the fish. I mean, you can catch these things, you can hold them in your arms, and then let them go. And that's by far what most people do. But that's what is the biggest problem facing the sturgeon today? I got to believe it's not pollution anymore. It's not poaching anymore. So what is it? The dams that are blocking their access to their spawning habitat?
Well, absolutely, that's one of them. Of course, sea lamprey is a problem. We know internationally the caviar trade is alive and well, and we do have initiatives to begin to address that. But it's people, and once these fish are a good year old, they're going to survive and thrive. Now, if there is pollution, that is going to be a detriment, because sturgeon are a keystone species, and if you have sturgeon in your watershed, you've got a pretty healthy watershed. Pollution is a problem. Overfishing is not a problem anymore. It used to be, back at the turn of the century when the fishermen discarded these large fish like cordwood on the side of the riverbanks because they thought they were trash fish. That was one of the demises. But, going forward, it's very it's really turned around in the 25 years we've been with this. Now you can go across the basin, and there are streamside rearing facilities doing what we do here, which we've kind of pioneered. And the sturgeon are making a comeback, and we would love to be able to delist them from threatened status.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I do. It might not be in our lifetime, but that is the number one goal. One of the goals of our organization, we do strategic planning and impacts and things like that. We would love to be able to dissolve, after this long time. And what I mean by that is, meaning that, hey, we set out to do these 15 things and we've accomplished them. Protect them in the springtime, let them do what God intended them to do, make sure the habitat is conducive, make sure the regulations are in place. People need to give a damn. And if people don't give a damn, then you lack that human dimension connection to your community and your resource. And so that's why education is so important. The assessments and the research really drive management decisions. But without progressive public involvement, you really lack a strong arm in your recovery efforts because people need to care.
Well, and over 2 decades, you have helped make a lot of people care about it. And I give you so much credit for that. I mean, I remember the first time I ever met you was at a small outdoor show. I don't even remember where it was. It was somewhere up north, and you and your partner were talking about this thing called Sturgeon for Tomorrow, and it was talk about grassroots. I mean, this was the very beginning, and to watch where you guys have taken it over the years is pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that. It's really been a labor of love, and I can say that after 28 years in the trenches, I am retiring. I'm not going anywhere, but we have succession planning in the works right now. Have a great team of people to take the organization to the next level. And certainly I'm available for coaching. But I'm excited. And like I said, this year there was still snow on the ground. I'm like, oh, it's warmed up. I'm going out on the river. And there's something about it that is pretty magical.
Oh, that's so cool.
I hope people really can engage in that and be a part of it.
Well, congrats on the retirement. I didn't know about that. I figured you're not going far, but you can step back and let somebody else take over for a little while. Congrats on that, Brenda. Brenda Archambo, the Sturgeon General. The website, sturgeonfortomorrow.org. That's sturgeonfortomorrow.org. Check it out. They're very active on social media. They do a lot of cool things. They brought a lot of people in, and they have elevated the knowledge and the interest in sturgeon across Michigan. And I think that's very, very cool. We will take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, a few more things to consider, a few more things to talk about, and then we'll wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know what he has planned for us this week. It won't be sturgeon, I guarantee that. Will it be turkey? Will it be walleye? Will it be coho? Stick around for a few more minutes. You'll find out right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to the Outdoor Magazine Show. My name is Mike Avery. Glad to be along with you. And appreciate you spending some time with me here on the show. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WMLQ in Manistee. That's 97.7. And in Saginaw, WSGW AM and FM, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. For these 3 hours each week, this one small corner of the building, I call it the Outdoor Magazine Studio. And so far, nobody has argued with me, so I'm going to continue to do just that. I'm in here with Jonathan Dent, Jonathan is kind of new to the show, but he's doing a great job. John, I appreciate that very, very much. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard as they have for me. Whether it's maintenance, like, mowing and cleaning up and thatching and spraying and all that stuff, or project work. Now, the project work is something that Reader is really specializing in and really promoting lately, because they can come onto your property. They can help you with the landscaping. They can help you with the design. They can do the work for you. The guys from Reader, I tell you, I've had a lot of experience with Reader over the past few years, and I can tell you their crews are top-notch and hard-working people who do a wonderful job. So if you're interested in that project work, or if you're interested in maintenance work, I would suggest you check out the website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. And if you give them a call, tell them I sent you their direction. That'll be a win-win all the way around. readerlandscaping.com. I always enjoy our conversations with Brenda Archambo, the Sturgeon General. I did not know that she was kind of stepping aside from that position, but I'm not surprised. You know, she's been doing it a long, long time, and there comes a point where you have done the work, you have set the groundwork, you have put things in the right direction, as Brenda has, and the people who have worked with her over the years. So congrats to you, Brenda Archambo, Sturgeon General. Oh, what else is on my list of things I want to talk about? I do want to let you know that I was able to, here a couple of days ago, get a real nice turkey. This is something I had been working on since the opening day of the season. You might remember that 20 minutes into the opening day, I missed a bird. My own fault. It always is, right? When you screw up in the outdoors, it's always your fault. You can't blame gear. You can't blame equipment. You can't blame anything else. You know, I screwed up and I missed it. Which, you know, better a good miss than a bad hit, right? And so it was disappointing. It wasn't frustrating. It was disappointing. But I thought, well, I've still got a long season in front of me. People say, well, how did you turkey hunt so long? I had season ZZ, which is Southern Michigan private land, which goes from, which the season started April 22nd and runs through the end of May. So there was a lot of time, and I knew I had a lot of time. And I spent a lot of time hunting. I hunted almost every day since the opening day. Now, I wasn't out there all day long, but I'd be out there for a few hours in the morning, a few hours in the evening, almost every day. I tried 1, 2, 3 different properties I was on. All of them had birds. In almost every case, I had interaction with birds. I was able to call in hens almost every time I was out there, and I was quite surprised that these hens weren't, followed by longbeards, but they weren't until the other morning. I'm sitting over 3 decoys, sitting there in my Wraith blind, the property of a new friend of mine, Kurt, who let me hunt his place, and I appreciate that. 3 hens walked into the field, followed by 2 big, beautiful, strutting longbeards. They never gobbled. They never made a sound. The only thing that kept this hunt from being the best hunt ever in the history of the world of turkey hunting was the fact that the birds weren't gobbling. But beyond that, everything else was perfect. The sun was shining on them. As they came into the field, they're puffed up and they're strutting and they're iridescent. They were magnificent, and they're 20 yards away. I had 2 hen decoys set up, and I had a semi-strut Jake decoy set up. And those 2 toms went over to that Jake decoy, and they started to circle it. And they're in full strut, right? 20 yards away. They're circling this decoy, and they're pecking at this decoy. They were not happy that there was a Jake decoy out in that field. And they circled it and circled, and I got it all on video. I used the camera on my phone, and I used a Tacticam that was on the side of the bow. Great video. Beautiful video. Eventually, I waited to get some video. I waited for the birds to get into position. The smaller of the 2 big birds walked around my decoy. I had the crosshairs of my scope at the center of his body. I pulled the trigger, and the arrow went right through the middle of him. He went about 20 feet. The other bird saw he was in trouble, kind of pushed him along. He went about 20 feet, and he nosedived into the field. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I credit this hunt to, number one, having enough resources to reach out to people and try to get access to property, but also the fact that I was patient, and I stuck with it, and I was stubborn. Sometimes you just got to be stubborn. And I was stubborn, and it paid off. Took that bird home, breasted it out. My wife Denise put it in a crock pot. We had it that night. It was excellent. I had to cook it for a long time. It is a wild bird. She put it in with white wine, some small potatoes, and it was excellent. In fact, I'm thinking about it now. I get out of the studio, I might go home and have that for lunch again. So it was a good season. Now it's time to turn my attention to walleye fishing. Well, and I'm going to Ontario for a bear hunt here in a few weeks as well. Problems, right? We'll take a break. When we come back, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. A quick programming note before we wrap up this week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Next week, or this week coming up actually, on Wednesday Night Live, that's Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on my social media outlets, Amy Trotter, Executive Director of MUCC, will be my guest, and we'll spend a good half hour or so with her talking about the issues of the day, and it'll be your chance to go on and ask her questions. So that's Wednesday Night Live coming up this next Wednesday, coming up at 7 o'clock. All right, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I mentioned he was going to wrap it up with us, and he does, and he is, and here he is. David, welcome back. How are you?
Well, pretty darn good, Michael, and yourself. I see you got your turkey.
I did, yep. And I tell you what, he was good. Now, we didn't do anything fancy. I breasted it out. Denise put it in a crock pot with white wine and some little small potatoes and some onions, and it was just and she had to cook it for a while, to get it to be tender. But man, was it good!
I'm sure, man. Wild turkey to me is one of the very best wild game meats. That and pheasant, I like the two of them very, very good.
Well, how about a recipe then? You got one in mind?
Well, if we could first mention that the American Legion in Sanford is having their wild game dinner May 20th, and you can get tickets at 430-0265 and ask for Fred. And now I do have a recipe. It's a turkey stir fry. You could use pheasant, duck if you want to leave it nice and rare, or goose too. So you're going to need a bunch of your favorite vegetables, stir-fry vegetables, such as carrots and celery and onions, maybe red onions, pea pods, bok choy, cabbage, red and green peppers, onions, bean sprouts, whatever you like and your family likes to dine on, by all means get it and use it. Cut it into same size pieces, or you can buy it frozen already. They make a great one that's already frozen. You're going to need about 2 to 3 tablespoons of toasted sesame seed oil, 2 to 3 teaspoons of soy sauce to marinate. Both of them are going to be used for marinating. You're going to need about 2 teaspoons of garlic ground up fresh, and 2 teaspoons of chopped up fresh ginger. And you need about 1/4 of a jar of beef gravy, or you could use turkey gravy or chicken gravy, whatever you think you like. And about 10 to 12 ounces of the turkey breast cut across the grain real thin. And you're going to marinate this actually for probably 3 to 4 hours if you can in the soy sauce, the sesame seed oil, and some ground up ginger, and the garlic also. Get a wok for very, very hot. Add the sesame oil. You want to get everything ready to go at one time, because you don't want to smoke your oil too much, because it sometimes has a harsh flavor. Add the garlic and ginger and saute for just very, very fast, just till it's nice and golden brown. Add the meat. Get the meat going in there. And then you're going to put, if you need a little bit more oil, add all of the vegetables and cook it till it's al dente, so it's nice and crisp. And then you can add the soy sauce, the brown sauce, and then keep stirring it until the tenderness is off to your liking. And then you could serve this over fluffy rice and maybe chop it with some scallions. Boy, oh boy. And this would be enough for at least 2, maybe 3 people after you have about 10 to 12 ounces of the turkey breast in there.
There's a lot of meat on a turkey breast, on a big old long beard.
There is, isn't there? That's why I like to use 4 or 5 different recipes. I wrap it up real good or put it in a vacuum sealer and freeze it and then bring it out throughout the year, and they can enjoy it a lot. Or you can have one breast, for an entire family. It's up to you, however you like to do it. Just use it. Get that bird.
No, just a real nice taste, and I was lucky with the arrow placement. I didn't affect any of the breast meat. It went right through the vitals. Everything was perfect. And then to cap it off that night, eating the bird the same night. I shot him that morning. We ate it that night. It was full circle, kind of corny, but pretty cool.
That sounds pretty cool, Michael.
It was pretty cool. Hey, tell me more about this event at Sanford at the is it VFW or Legion Post?
Sanford American Legion. It's their 9th annual.
9th annual, and that's next weekend coming up, next Saturday.
Right, and I gave the number for Fred to get some tickets, or you can go right to the American Legion there in Sanford and get your tickets. I know there's a few tickets left.
So you're cooking.
Yep.
What am I doing?
You're going to be the MC with the mostest.
MC with the most. I figured Fred would find something for me to do. All right, Dave, I will look forward to talking with you on next week's show, and I will look forward to seeing you in person at the Legion Post in Sanford there next Saturday.
That'll be great. We don't see enough of one another.
Well, now that you're retired, that's going to change, though.
Well, you got your boat in the water yet? I'm ready to
Don't
fish.
talk about the boat. It's not in the water yet. I went through the whole show and didn't bring it up, and the last 30 seconds you had to bring up the boat.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just pulling your leg. I'm just pulling your leg. No, but real soon now. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. I sure appreciate you listening. Hey, listen, you can check in with me during the week. Check out my social media outlets. Feel free to send me an email to Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't forget about the Wednesday night lives, Wednesday evenings at 7. This time around, this week with Amy Trotter, Executive Director of MUCC. I think that wraps it up. And I think that wraps up this week's show. It's been a pleasure being here. I appreciate you being along. My name is Mike Avery. This is Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com.